I would encourage you guys to subscribe to this podcast. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hi there, you're welcome to His God TV. If today is your first time of watching our videos, I would like to remind you to subscribe to our channel. And if you have already subscribed to, we thank you very much for your support. This is a channel dedicated to the teaching of history, as well as CRS, social studies, and English language. And so if you are interested in any of these contents, I kindly click on the subscribe button for more. We also visit other historical sites in Ghana. Good. So today we are looking at religious tensions during the reign of King Ahab, or Ahab, as other people may want to call him. So that is what we are looking at. We are still looking at the history of the people of Israel. In our previous lesson, or the last video that we did, we looked at the reforms that King Josiah introduced to the people of Israel, or to the religious life of the people of Israel. And so today we are looking at yet another king and the achievements of King Ahab. But most importantly, we will look at the King Ahab's marriage to a certain woman known as Jezebel, and that marriage's effect, or the consequence of that marriage in the life of the people of Israel. How did King Ahab's marriage with Jezebel affected the socio-political and also religious life of the people of Israel? And so today, that is basically what our lesson is going to be about. And so we would read the Bible, and then we would analyze the Bible as well. So let's go in there and begin with our lesson objectives for today. By the end of our lesson for today, you should be able to describe the marriage between Ahab and Jezebel and its consequences on the life of Israel. So at least you should be able to say something, describe the marriage of Ahab and Jezebel, and more so, what was the consequence or the consequences of that marriage to the people of Israel. And we all know that marriages are very, very powerful. It can make and also unmake you as a person. And also, you should be able to explain the religious tensions in Israel during the reign of King Ahab, or Ahab. So when we talk about religious tension, what do we mean by religious tension? If there is tension at a particular place, you know how the place feels like. And so what do we mean by religious tension? And this religious tension occurred during the reign of King Ahab. And so what was it about? You should be able to explain what we mean by religious tension in Israel during the reign of King Ahab. So let's go into the Bible, and let's go into the lesson proper and begin with our introductions for today. So before we look at that, let's introduce ourselves to something. Now, Israel practiced monotheism. What do you understand by monotheism? Monotheism, or monotheistic religion, simply means the worship of one God, which then means that all that we are saying is that Israel practiced a monotheism, or a monotheistic religious practices, which means that Israel worshipped one God. And we all know this God in the person of Yahweh. All right. Now, this is because Israel entered into a covenant agreement with Yahweh. You recall on the Mount Sinai that I'll be your people. Okay. If you respect me, I'm going to be your God, and you will be what? My people. So Israel had entered into a marriage covenant with the people, with God, or Yahweh. And that made the state of Israel, or the Hebrew people, practiced a monotheistic religion, which means that they were forced to worship only one God, and that one God was Yahweh. Okay. Now, therefore, the institution of kingship was sacred because the king was a servant of God and to take care of God's people, and that is Israel. So the kingship position was considered as a sacred position, that is divine. Divine in the sense that it is ordained by God. And so the king was seen as a representative of God, a representation of God on earth. And so the king was expected to take care of God's children or God's people, as God was expected to take care of his people. So the king was a representation of God, and that is how kings have been perceived all throughout history. When you read a lot about other civilizations, other people, you realize that kings, or the position of kingship, was seen as a sacred institution, from Egypt up to the West African forest and coastal people, the Akans. They all believe that kings are divine. The role of kingship is a divine role. So in that sense, whatever the king says or does is what the people would also do, or the subject would also follow. So kings were very, very much powerful, and their way of life could either make or unmake the people that followed them, or his subjects. Do you understand? Good. And so that was the situation at this time. Now, Ahab, who was a king, who had been king, he succeeded his father. So Ahab's father was called Omri. Okay, so Omri died, and then his son Ahab succeeded him. Now, Ahab ruled Israel from Samaria for a period of 22 years. Israel, so we are still talking about the northern kingdom, Samaria. So he was in Samaria, and then he ruled Israel for a period of 22 years. So they can ask you in any of the objective questions that King Ahab ruled for how many years. Now, he married a certain lady or woman called Jezebel, and this lady was the daughter of Edwin of Sidon, of Phoenicia. So the daughter of Edwin, or the king of Edwin, who was in Sidon, in the country of Phoenicia, and that is who Ahab married. Now, that marriage, or Ahab's marriage with Jezebel, affected almost every aspect of life of the people of Israel. It affected the religious life, the social life, the moral life, as well as even the political life of the people of Israel. And so marriages are very, very powerful. Like I said at the beginning, it can make and unmake you. It can make and unmake even your children, your great grandchildren. And so that is a little introduction about Ahab and Jezebel. So our next will be for us to go into the Bible and look at some of the consequences of Ahab's marriage with the people, Ahab's marriage with the consequences of Jezebel's marriage, or Ahab's marriage with Jezebel. And we will take our Bible verses in the next. So let's go into the Bible and find out some of the consequences that the marriage of Ahab had on the people of Israel. Okay, so now let's go in the Bible and look at the marriage between Ahab and Jezebel, and how that marriage affected the people of Israel, how the marriage affected the religious life of the people of Israel. And so that is what we should be looking out for in our reading. We will read 3 Bible verses, and mind you, the approved Bible is the Revised Standard Version. That's the RSV. So if you don't have that one, it's better you read from the screen. If you have it too, you can open and read alongside. So our first reading will be taken from 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29 to 34. And then our second reading will be taken from 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1 to 7. And then our third, or the last one, will be taken from 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 1 to 19. And in all these reading, we have to find out the consequences of the marriage between Ahab and Jezebel, how that marriage affected the religious life of the people of Israel, the impact of the marriage, and even the nature of the marriage. So let's begin with the first reading. So 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 29, and we are reading up to 34. But let me start from 28. And Omri slept with his fathers, and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son reigned in his stead. So we know already that Ahab's father was Omri, and Ahab reigned or succeeded his father Omri after he died in Samaria, and that is the northern part of Israel. Now, in the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab the son of Omri began to reign over Israel, and Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. So Ahab reigned for 22 years. Now, during the time that Ahab became a king, that was the 38th year of Asa. Now, Asa too was a king of Judah. That's Jerusalem, the southern kingdom. So Asa had already been on the throne of Judah for 38 years when Ahab was made king over Israel in the northern kingdom. And bear in mind that we have already done the division of the kingdom, which was caused by Rehoboam. And so at this point, you should know that the Hebrew people had two kings, or they had two kingdoms, and that's the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And Asa was a king of Judah, and that is the southern kingdom, whereas Ahab was the king of Israel. So let's move on to the 30. And Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all that were before him. Good. So we can know what he did. Now, so what did he do? And as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the sons of Naboth, he took for a wife Jezebel, the daughter of the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. So Ahab married from Sidon, Phoenicia, and the name of his wife was known as Jezebel, and he was the daughter of Ethbaal, and Ethbaal was the king of Sidon as at that time. And so the people of Sidon were into the worship of a certain god known as Baal, and so Jezebel brought Baal, or the worship of Baal, to the palace of Ahab. And so Ahab then left the worship of Yahweh, and then he followed his wife to worship Baal. Now, this is what Ahab did in 32. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. So Ahab erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. So he built a whole house for this god known as Baal from Sidon, to worship him. And Ahab made an Asherah. And Asherah too was another god that was also introduced by Jezebel. Ahab did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel who were before him. So you can see a deliberate shift, a deliberate attempt of Ahab trying to move directly away from the worship of Yahweh to the worship of Baal and then other gods like Asherah. Now, in his days, so in Ahab's days, Hiel of Bethel built Jericho. He laid its foundation at the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, and set up its gate at the cost of his youngest son, Sigab, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Joshua, the son of Nun. So after the destruction of after the destruction of Jericho by Joshua and his people, Joshua cursed anyone who would try to rebuild the city of Jericho. Okay, again. And he cursed that anyone who will build it will build the city, will lay his foundation at the cost of his first son, and also will build the gate of Jericho again at the cost of his youngest son. And it was during the reign of Ahab that this prophecy was fulfilled. And in the days of Hiel of Bethel, of course, in his days, Hiel, so the Hiel was the one who decided to rebuild Jericho, and his first son died. He laid its foundation at the cost of his first son, known as Abiram, and then also at the cost of its gate, known as, of course, the younger son, Sigab. And I've seen a question, a WASI question, whereby they were asking students of these two names, so you should bear in mind. But let's analyze the actions of Ahab in this context. It looks as if, I don't know whether he was being persuaded by the woman or he just wanted to worship, foreign gods. But it looks as if Ahab was persuaded by Jezebel to do all the things that he was doing for Baal, or for the worship of Baal. So clearly you can see that Israel has moved away from the worship of Yahweh to the worship of Baal. More so, they have moved away from monotheistic worship to polytheistic worship, in the sense that now they are not only worshiping Yahweh, but they are also worshiping more than one God, of course, and we've known two of them, Baal and Asherah. All right, good. So now let's look at the second verse, or the second text, verse 17, chapter 1, chapter 1 Kings, chapter 17, verse 1 to 7. Verse 1 to 7. So let's take and look at that one too as well. So now Elijah, the Tishbite of Tishbe in Gilead, said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word." And the word of the Lord came to him. Now, so Elijah at this point was a prophet, and he warned Ahab because of the things that Ahab was doing. He warned him, or he cursed the people of Israel, that as long as the Lord of God of Israel lives, there was going to be no rain or dew for years, except he comes back to reverse the curse on the people of Israel. So due to the activities of Jezebel and Ahab, Israel went into drought for a number of years before they finally got water. So we will look at the years in the course of the reading. So now, after Elijah had cursed Israel, the word of the Lord came to him and told him to depart from here and turn eastward and hid yourself by the brook of Cherith, that is east of the Jordan. You shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. Okay, so he went and did according to the word of the Lord. He went and dwelt by the brook Cherith, that is east of the Jordan, and the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. And after a while, the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. So when Elijah cursed them that there was no going to be rain for a number of years, he himself had to find a place where he can have access to food and water as well. So that is when the word of the Lord came to him to hid himself in the brook of Cherith, which was found in the eastern side of Jordan. And the Lord instructed him to drink from that brook, so to drink water from that brook, and also ravens, which was a type of bird. So the ravens are a type of bird. They were the ones who were going to supply Elijah with food, and they did, both in the evening, afternoon, and then in the morning. So morning, afternoon, and evening, they were serving him bread, meat. I think bread, meat. Every morning, afternoon, evening. I think that Elijah's food was not balanced. Or what do you think? Do you think it was a balanced diet to eat bread, meat in the morning, bread, meat in the afternoon, and bread, meat in the evening as well? Anyway, that's just by the way. So yes, these are some of the consequences. So you can see another consequence here. And I'm thinking you can be able to give me that consequence of the marriage between Ahab and Jezebel. From this, I'll not tell you from this passage. So let's look at the next one. We are going to look at 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 1 to 19. So let's move forward to 18, verse 1 to 19. Good. So after many days, and don't forget Elijah, the brook of Cherith now dried up. So there was no rain. There was no water for Elijah, even himself, to even drink. So after many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, "Go, show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." So does it mean that when Elijah ran out of water, that was when the Lord found it necessary to inform Elijah to go back to Ahab and show himself to him? And for how long? It was in the 3rd year. So which means that Israel went into drought for 3 years. So Elijah's pronouncement of drought lasted for a period of 3 years on the people of Israel. So on the 3rd year, when Elijah himself was running out of water, the word of God came to him. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. Because there was no water, there was no rain, and so crops were dying off. So in Samaria, in Israel, the famine was very, very, very severe over there. And all these hardship is caused by the leader. It's caused by just because the leader has refused to honor Yahweh, to honor God. And so look at how the people are suffering. And that is how, when a leader refuses to honor God, when a leader engages in immoral activities, that is how the people suffer. The people are the ones who are going to suffer. And for all you know, even the king himself was not suffering, because if there is no food, I'm sure the last food remaining will be given to the king to eat. And so that is how important it is for us as a people, as a leaders, people leading people. We should be very, very careful, and we should be mindful about our actions, because our actions, the effects of our actions, are not only going to be felt by ours, but most importantly, the people that we lead. And so you can see now the famine was severe in Samaria. The people were dying. And Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now Obadiah revered the Lord greatly. And when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. So who was Obadiah? Obadiah was in the house of Ahab, and the Bible is describing Obadiah as somebody who revered God, who respected God greatly. Now, this is another actions of Jezebel. Jezebel decided to cut off, meaning killed. He began to kill the prophets of Yahweh, or the prophets of the Lord. He began to kill all of them one after the other. And so when Obadiah saw that this is what Jezebel was up to, he decided to hide 100 of these prophets in caves, and then he was feeding them with bread and water every day. All right. And so that was the role that Obadiah played in the midst of all these religious tensions that were going on in Israel at this point. Good. And Ahab said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the valleys. Perhaps you may find grass and save the horses and mules alive, and not lose some of the animals." So you see what I was talking about. You see, Ahab was even thinking about the animals and the horses, because the water, the grasses were all drying up. So I'm sure he himself was okay, but the people were not okay. They were in severe hunger and famine. But he was thinking about animals, and that should tell you that, like I said, as a leader, sometimes even the consequences, you may not feel it, but your people are the ones who normally go through that. So he called Obadiah, who was in the king's household, and then he instructed him to go and find any grass for the horses and the mules, so that they may not lose them. So they divided the land between them to pass through it. Ahab went in one direction by himself, and Obadiah went in another direction. So Ahab and Obadiah himself, they all decided to embark on that search. And as Obadiah was on the way, behold, Elijah met him, and Obadiah recognized him and fell on his face and said, "Is it you, my lord Elijah?" And he answered him, "It is I. Go, tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here." Don't forget, at this point, Elijah had already been instructed by God to go and show himself to the king. And so when he came across Obadiah, and Elijah also recognized Obadiah, so he told him that, "It is me, so go and inform your king that I have come." And he said, "Wherein, wherein have I sinned? Wherein have I sinned that you would give your servant unto the hand of Ahab to kill me? And the Lord your God, as the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom, whether my Lord has not sent to seek you. And when they will say, he is not here, he will take an oath of the kingdom or nation that they had not found you." So when Obadiah was instructed by Elijah to go and inform the king that Elijah was here, Obadiah felt that he was afraid, because he felt that if I go there, he was actually asking Elijah a rhetorical question here, that what have I done? What sin have I committed that you would instruct me to go and tell the king, or for the king Ahab to kill me? Because if I go and inform Ahab that you are here, you have been out, you've been lost for 3 years, and you are now coming. So what if I go and tell him, Ahab, and he comes and you are not around? What do you think will happen to me? So Elijah had to assure him that he was not joking, he was not lying. And now you say, "Go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here." So this is still Obadiah talking. "And as soon as I have gone from you, the Spirit of the Lord will carry you whither I know not. And so when I come and tell Ahab, and he cannot find you, he will kill me, although I, your servant, have revered the Lord from my youth." So Obadiah was concerned about his life, because he felt Elijah was not a stable man. He could be taken, he could be swept away at any point in time. So if I go and inform him, and he comes back and you are not around, it's going to be a whole different story altogether for him. Verse 13, has it not been told by my Lord that I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, how I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50s in a cave and fed them with bread and water? So Obadiah was still in a frightened mood, and he was trying to recount some of the good deeds that he had done for the Lord or the prophets of Yahweh. And now you say, go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here and he will kill me. I think Obadiah was talking too much at this point in time. But let's hear Elijah. And Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah assured Elijah that he was going to stay. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. So Elijah did not lie against, he stood to his word, and they met, the two of them met. So Ahab saw Elijah, and Ahab said to him, is it you, you troubler of Israel? So this question, for instance, I have seen whereby they quote, examiners will quote this line, is it you, you troubler of Israel? Then they will bring some ellipsis, then they will continue, I have not troubled Israel. So when Ahab, and then they will ask students to react to the statement. Good. But let's come back to the interpretation. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is it you, you troubler of Israel? So you see over here, Ahab was accusing Elijah as being the troublemaker of Israel, mainly because it was he, Elijah, who pronounced drought on the people of Israel. So between Elijah and Ahab, who do you think is the cause of the problems that Israel was facing at this point in time? Would you blame Elijah or Ahab? Because Ahab here is blaming Elijah. Let's hear what Elijah says. I have not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. So this is where Elijah hits on the nail, that I am not the troubler, you are the troubler, because you have forsaken the Lord's commandment and you are following foreign gods. Let's look at the last verse. Now therefore send and gather all Israel to meet at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah who ate at Jezebel's table. So Elijah then throws in a contest, and this is what we know as the Mount Carmel contest, whereby Elijah then throws in and say that, well, I want to have a contest, stage a contest with you. I want to meet you on Mount Carmel. So gather 450 prophets. Bear in mind, 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. So how many prophets in all is coming from Ahab, or is Elijah expecting Ahab to bring? This is 450 plus 400, making it 850 prophets. And these 850 prophets are going to face Elijah, one man standing, one prophet on Mount Carmel for a contest. And don't be surprised, because at this period in Israel, what happened was that gods were accepted. Okay, gods were accepted based on, should I say, magic or miracles? You know, there is a thin line between magic and miracles, but the powers of God, or any God at all, was determined based on the magic being performed. So at this point, you could see that Jezebel's activity, as well as Ahab's of course helping Jezebel, has created some sort of religious tension in the sense that the people of Israel are torn between two religions. Is it Baalism, if I may say it, or Yahwehism? All right, is it to worship Baal or to worship Yahweh? Also bear in mind that the religion of the king was the religion of the people. So it is what the king follows is what the people will follow. So at this point, since Ahab was following the worship of Baal and Asherah, that then means that all the people of Israel are going to do same. Majority are going to do same. All right. And so for the people to believe, or for even he himself, Ahab, to believe, there must be some sort of miracles or magic being performed by the gods being, the gods in context. And that is why, if you recall, Moses asked God for a sign before he would go and lead the people of Israel. He did that because of this issue, that at this point, at this period, gods were the powers of gods were measured based on the miracles and the magics that they all performed. So that is why Elijah threw up this challenge. All right, good. So I think you have jotted down some important consequences of the marriage between Ahab and Jezebel. Yes, I know you have jotted some importance down. So let's go back to the slide, and then we will look at the summary of the individual, some of the consequences. Of course, some of the consequences, we'll look at the summary of them, and then we'll bring our discussions to an end. All right. So bear in mind also that after this, we will look at the Mount Carmel. I know you want to know what happened. 850 prophets as against one prophet who was Elijah. We will look at that one in our next lesson. But let's go and look at the summary, and then we'll bring our discussions to an end. Okay, so now let's take a look at the consequences of Ahab's marriage with Jezebel. And I hope you enjoy the Bible reading section. So let's have a summarize of the consequences of Ahab's marriage with Jezebel. So just a summary of what we just read from the Bible. So the first one was that Jezebel, or the marriage, brought the worship of Baal gods in Israel with the help of his husband. So Ahab, for Jezebel, was able to bring in some gods from Sidon to the people of Israel, and we of course read that from the Bible. Again, Ahab also erected altars for Baal, and then Baal and Asherah in the house of Baal in Samaria. Thus, he led a lot of the people of Israel to commit what is known as apostasy. All right, and because he erected altars and also even built houses for these gods, Baal and Asherah, in Samaria, causing many of these Israelites to turn away from the worship of Yahweh to the worship of foreign gods. And that's, as I said, committing apostasy. Good. Now, Jezebel also introduced what we called cult prostitution with the help of her husband. Okay, her attempt was to make Baalism the official religion of Israel, thereby supplanting Yahwehism from Israel. So this cult prostitution had to do with, it was a pagan worship or practices whereby there was some sort of immoral acts being committed in the temples, where people would go and have indiscriminate sex in the temple. Okay, and don't forget that Jezebel himself was into that. And so this idea of this pagan worship of cult prostitution was introduced to the people of Israel with the help of her husband. Of course, Jezebel was able to introduce that. And it was also her plan to do away with the worship of Yahweh and make the people of Israel focus on the worship of Baal only. Again, it was during the reign of Ahab that Thiele of Bethel built Jericho and laid the foundation of Jericho at the cost of his first son, Abiram, and set its gate at the cost of his youngest son, Sigab. Now, you recall we read from the Bible whereby it was the time of Ahab that Thiele, of course, decided to build Jericho or rebuild Jericho, which had been destroyed. and curse. Remember, Joshua rained a curse on Jericho. If you read Joshua chapter 6, verse 26, that anyone who would attempt to build the city or rebuild the city again was going to do that at the cost of would do that at the cost of his first and youngest son. And then Hal was the one who, of course, did that at that time. Good. Let's take a look at more of the consequences. Again, Ahab, also with the support of his wife, also perverted justice against the people of Israel. If you look at, which we will look at in our next lesson, the seizure of Naboth's vineyard, and that was also something that Ahab and his wife also did. And lastly, Jezebel also persecuted the prophets of Yahweh who opposed her religious, social, and political policies. So some of these prophets of Yahweh, as we read from the Bible, were persecuted or were killed by Jezebel. Okay, and also an attempt to wipe out Yahwism and force Baalism on Israel led to what we call the religious tension. So this is what the religious tension was all about. We have already established that Israel was a monotheistic state in the sense that they worshipped only one God. However, with Jezebel, Israel was now in a crossroad as to worship Baal or to worship Yahweh. And so there was this whole tension, this whole conflict between the prophets of Baal as well as the prophets of Yahweh. And that is what we mean by the religious tension at this point. So Yahwehism and Baalism, which of these two religions was the people to follow? And so that was what the whole religious tension was all about. And so because of that, or this religious tension, it led Elijah to pronounce a 3-year drought. You recall in the Bible reading, a 3-year drought, no water, no nothing on Israel because of what Ahab and the wife had done. For 3 years, there was no rain because of what Ahab and the husband did. Okay, and then so you recall a certain guy who lived in the king's house, known as Obadiah. What do you think was Obadiah's role in the whole religious tension saga? What was the role that Obadiah played? Kindly let me know in the comment section the role that he played. We did talk or read about Obadiah. Good. So this is just a summary of the whole passage and some of the consequences of that marriage that had on the people of Israel. Now, what lessons can we learn from Ahab and Jezebel's marriage? Can you come up with some of the lessons? So let's begin with them. One of the lessons is that we need to pray before selecting a life partner. We need to pray before selecting a life partner, which is very, very important and key in choosing a life partner, because it was Jezebel who encouraged Ahab to disobey God. Again, they need to do a proper background check before making choice for a would-be partner. Yes, you need to know the person, his background, where he comes from, before you decide to settle with a person. And also, they need to be careful not to allow one's partner influences him or her to sin. The influence could be positive. If it is a positive influence, then it is good. But if the influence becomes negative, then we need to be very careful, because Ahab was influenced negatively. They need to be careful not to allow one's partner to lure him into apostasy. Yes, your partner can lead you into being an apostate, whereby you even decide not to worship God anymore. And so these are some of the lessons that we can learn from the marriage between Ahab and Jezebel. And I know that you may also have your own lessons. Let's take a look at the causes of religious conflict. Now we have religious conflicts all over the world. Now the Al-Shabaabs, Al-Qaeda's, the ISIS, all these extremist groups are gunning for support. They just want, they are just causing so much chaos in other countries, and all these are of course, what we term as religious conflict. Today, there are so many religious conflicts in most parts of Africa. For instance, in Burkina Faso, we currently had people running away from Burkina Faso to Ghana because of the activities of these Islamist extremists. And so, religious conflicts and tension are all over the world. What are some of the causes of this tension? Intolerance, because some people do not tolerate each other's religion, which is very, very bad. Again, derogatory remarks about people's religion. People like to do that a lot. They insult other people's religion without any apology. For crying out loud, let us embrace everybody to prevent some of these wars and tensions. Disrespect to other religions. People don't respect other religions. They feel that if you belong to this religion, then you are this type of person. So a lot of people do not respect other religions. And if you don't respect the religion, how would you respect the people? And the adherents to that religion will become very offended. Trying to force one's religion on others. And that is exactly what these Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, and co are doing, trying to force their religion on other people. Good. So now let's then look at some of the effects of religious tension. It can lead to hatred, all right? Hatred, yes, it can lead to hatred. Again, it can also create division, among people. And then the last one, it can lead to war, which we are witnessing, or the world is witnessing now. War everywhere because of religious tension and conflict. So how do we then minimize these religious conflict and tension? I know you are expecting the points to pop up, but they won't come. If you know the causes, I believe that you should also know the ways to minimize or stop these religious conflict. Good. We've had a very interesting time. Thank you for watching. In our next video, or in our next lesson, we will look at the Mount Carmel context. We have read from the Bible that Elijah has thrown in a challenge to the prophets of Baal, so that this whole religious conflict can be solved. So the God that performs that miracle, that wonder, would be the God that Israel was going to worship. So Elijah has brought in, or he has thrown in the challenge. And so in our next lesson, we will look at the challenge, how the challenge went, who won, and what happened in the challenge. Subscribe to the channel and also share our pages. Thank you very much for your support. Bye-bye.
First among equals. Bye.